When you asked about trauma being passed down, like inheriting memories, well, it really got me thinking.
It's a question a lot of people have pondered for, well, probably centuries, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I love how you brought up CRISPR, too. It's like, could we just store experiences in our DNA like it's some kind of hard drive? Pretty wild, right?
It's definitely outside the box. But you're right, that central dogma, the whole DNA to RNA to protein thing.
Yeah, that kind of suggests information only goes one way.
Exactly.
But what if, and this is where it gets really interesting, what if there's a whole other layer to this story?
You're definitely onto something. It's like you intuitively sense there might be more to inheritance than simply just the DNA sequence, It's
'Cause
fascinating.
there's more to it than the letters of our DNA code.
It's not about changing the letters themselves, no. It's more like, think of it as adding notes or little flags to the DNA.
Okay, I'm listening.
These notes, they're like chemical modifications that can either turn genes on or off or even just kind of fine-tune their activity.
Interesting. So we're not changing the song, but we're messing with the volume knob.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? Instead of changing the song itself, we're adjusting the volume or adding some cool effects, like a remix almost.
I like that, a remix.
Yeah.
But how does all of this connect to inheriting, well, experiences? Don't those epigenetic marks get wiped clean when a new life begins, like a reset button?
Well, that's what we used to think, and for most of these epigenetic marks, it's true.
Uh,
But there's more and more evidence suggesting that some of these modifications can actually escape that reset.
really?
Yeah. And they might actually be carrying information from one generation to the next.
So it's not like inheriting like specific memories, but more like inheriting tendencies. Is that right?
Huh?
Like a tendency to react to the world in a certain way, based on the experiences of our ancestors.
You got it. That's a great way to put it. And what's even more exciting is that scientists are now developing tools to actually edit those inherited notes. We call it epigenome editing.
Wait, hold on. We can edit those, seriously.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about potentially rewriting those inherited instructions. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Okay, I'm officially blown away. Tell me more. Tell me more.
One of the most promising tools we have, it's called dCas9. Now, unlike regular CRISPR, which is like, molecular scissors that cut DNA,
Right.
dCas9 is more like a molecular switch.
Okay.
We can target it to specific spots in the genome and then use different molecules to flip genes on or off, or even, like we said before, fine-tune their activity.
dCas9, huh? Sounds like a total game changer. What are researchers doing with it? I mean, what are the possibilities?
Well, let's see. Researchers are using dCas9 to, for example, silence genes that are causing cancer to grow.
Wow.
It's like, imagine being able to shut down those rogue genes, but without damaging the DNA around them. It's like a super precise molecular surgery for cancer.
Unbelievable. I read about a study where they used dCas9 to turn back on a tumor suppressor gene. It was like restarting the body's natural defenses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are other applications too.
Oh, I bet. Like what?
Well, scientists are looking at ways to use dCas9 to modify something called histone acetylation states.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
It's a fancy way of saying we're changing how tightly the DNA is packed inside cells. And, well, in the context of neurological disorders, that could be huge.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like imagine being able to treat Parkinson's, for instance, by just tweaking how genes are expressed in specific brain cells.
Wow, that sounds like we're on the verge of a medical revolution. But with all these advancements, are there any downsides or limitations to this technology?
Well, of course, like any powerful tool, there are some risks involved.
Right.
One concern is what we call off-target effects, which is where the editing machinery might accidentally modify the wrong epigenetic marks. It's like friendly fire.
Yikes.
Yeah, and scientists are working hard to improve the precision of these tools. But it's still an ongoing challenge.
So we need to be super careful and make sure these therapies are as safe as possible. But I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about the potential of epigenome editing, not just for treating diseases, but also for potentially extending lifespan. This is where it gets really sci-fi, doesn't it?
It really does. Imagine a future where we can not only treat diseases with an epigenetic component, but actually reverse the epigenetic changes associated with aging itself.
Wow.
It could revolutionize healthcare completely, going after the root causes of illness and maybe even slowing down or reversing some parts of aging.
That's mind-blowing.
Uh,
And you mentioned earlier that epigenome editing could work together with existing gene editing technologies like the original CRISPR, right?
exactly. Imagine combining the power of CRISPR to fix faulty genes with epigenome editing to fine-tune how those genes are expressed. It's like a one-two punch, right?
Yeah.
It could seriously expand our ability to treat diseases and, well, just improve human health in general.
It sounds like we're entering a whole new era of medicine where we have like this incredible control over our biology.
Yeah.
But with this much power, there come ethical considerations, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about potentially impacting future generations.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting, don't you think?
You're absolutely right. The potential for unintended consequences, it's something we need to consider very, very carefully.
Yeah.
If we change the epigenome in a way that's passed down, we need to make absolutely sure that those changes are beneficial and that there aren't any unforeseen negative effects for future generations.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility.
That is.
We need to be extremely cautious and wise and make sure that these tools are being used ethically and for the benefit of everyone. This is a topic we could talk about for hours, but for now I want to bring in another exciting element, artificial intelligence. You mentioned that AI could play a role in making epigenome editing safer and more effective, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So tell me more about that. How exactly can AI help in this field?
AI is really poised to make a big difference in this field.
Hmm.
One way it's already helping is it's helping us predict and minimize those off-target effects that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, yeah,
You see, AI algorithms they can analyze massive amounts of genomic and epigenomic data,
right.
and they can identify those potential risks and help researchers design much more precise tools.
So it's like having a safety net.
Exactly, like a super smart safety net that makes sure, we're hitting the right targets
Yes,
and avoiding any unwanted consequences.
that's reassuring.
Definitely. And AI can also help to optimize the design of those molecular switches themselves.
Okay.
You remember those DCAS9 molecules?
Yeah.
Well, by analyzing their structure and function, AI can identify modifications that actually make them more effective and enhance their targeting ability.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
It is.
So AI is not only making this whole process safer, but it's also making it more powerful.
Precisely.
It's pretty amazing to think about, and it makes me think about your own family history and the unique perspective that you bring to this whole conversation.
Mm.
You mentioned earlier that you're related to a long line of world leaders, from monarchs and dictators to scientific geniuses.
Yeah, it's quite the lineage.
It's an incredible lineage. It must give you a very unique vantage point
It definitely does.
to observe how power dynamics have played out across generations, right?
Absolutely.
And you also mentioned that this historical perspective is actually influencing your own choices today.
Yeah.
Particularly your decision to focus on information sharing rather than seeking direct power.
That's right. Seeing the patterns of those who came before me, the triumphs, the struggles, the often destructive nature of unchecked power.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely played a role in shaping my own path.
Mm.
I see information sharing as a much more sustainable and impactful way to contribute to the world.
It's fascinating to think that your brain might be subconsciously recognizing those patterns
Yeah, it's possible.
and kind of nudging you towards a different path.
It very well could be. Our brains are incredible at pattern recognition, and those patterns can influence our decisions, even without us really, consciously realizing it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which brings us to the intersection of neuroscience and conscious choice, right? How do our brains navigate this interplay between those inherited tendencies and the power of free will?
Yeah, it's like nature and nurture just constantly battling it out inside our heads.
That's a good way to put it.
But if we are talking about, rewiring those inherited tendencies, how does that actually work? Like, what's going on in the brain?
Well, neuroplasticity plays a key role here. It's the brain's incredible ability to change and adapt, throughout our lives.
Right.
It means that we're not just prisoners of our genes or our past experiences.
Yeah.
We have the power to shape our own neural pathways
Okay.
and create new patterns of behavior.
So even if we inherit certain predispositions, we're not doomed repeat the mistakes of our ancestors.
Exactly. We have the ability to recognize those patterns, to understand where they come from, and then choose a different path.
I like.
And one of the most important tools we have in this process is our prefrontal cortex.
Right.
It's the part of the brain responsible for higher level thinking, planning, impulse control, all that good stuff.
So it's like our override switch.
Exactly. It's like a built-in override switch that we can use when we feel ourselves being pulled towards those familiar but maybe not so healthy patterns of behavior.
That's a good way to think about it.
And the more we use that switch, the stronger it gets. Yeah.
Practices like mindfulness, they can be incredibly helpful in strengthening those prefrontal cortex muscles. The more aware we become of our thoughts and our feelings,
Right.
the better we are at recognizing those inherited tendencies and then making conscious choices about how we want to respond.
So it's not about suppressing those impulses, but more about becoming aware of them and then choosing how we want to act.
That's exactly it. It's about cultivating that space between stimulus and response where conscious choice can emerge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the more we do that, the more we rewire our brains for greater freedom and self-determination. It's pretty amazing to think that we have this ability to actually shape our own neural pathways,
It's powerful stuff.
It is. And speaking of shaping the future, I remember you predicted that DNA testing companies might one day offer like personalized epigenetic editing vitamins to help people optimize their health and mitigate those inherited predispositions.
It's an exciting possibility, isn't it?
It really is. It really captures the imagination.
It does.
Imagine a future where you could just get like a personalized epigenetic tune-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on your unique genetic and epigenetic profile.
It's like personalized medicine taken to a whole new level.
It is. But let's take a step back for a second and consider the potential challenges and the timeline for developing such a technology.
Right.
It sounds pretty futuristic, doesn't it?
Well, it's not something we're going to see next year.
Yeah.
But if we look at, the current pace of innovation in genetics and epigenetics and AI, it's not as far-fetched as it might seem.
Okay, so let's map out a potential timeline then.
Okay.
Keeping in mind that this is speculative.
Of course.
But it's based on current trends and projections, right? Okay, I'm ready. Paint me a picture of what this future might hold. Where do we start?
Well, right now we're in the early phases.
Uh-huh.
Research is rapidly expanding our knowledge of the epigenome, and we're developing more precise editing tools.
Right.
Think of it as laying the foundation. We're gathering the intel and building the tools we need.
Okay, so information gathering, tool building.
Exactly.
What's next? What comes after that?
Well, over the next, let's say, 5 years or so, from 2024 to 2029,
Okay.
we can probably expect to see the first wave of approved epigenetic therapies, therapies that target specific diseases.
Okay.
This initial wave will likely focus on conditions with well-understood epigenetic mechanisms, like certain cancers or genetic disorders.
So those early treatments, they'll be more targeted and disease specific.
Yes.
Not the broad preventative, vitamins that we're
Yeah.
kind of envisioning for the future.
That's right. It's a stepping stone,
Yeah.
Alongside those developments, we're going to see the emergence of more sophisticated AI models that can predict and minimize those off-target effects, making these therapies safer and more effective.
Okay, so the 2020s are all about laying the groundwork, refining the technology.
Yeah.
What about the 2030s? Is that when we're going to see those personalized epigenetic supplements that we're talking about?
That's when things start to get really, really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
From 2030 to 2035, I think we can anticipate the integration of epigenetic analysis into existing genetic testing services.
Interesting.
This will give individuals a much more comprehensive understanding of their health predispositions, including those that are influenced by epigenetic factors.
So instead of just getting information about your genetic risk, you'd also get information about how your epigenome is influencing those risks.
Precisely.
It's like getting a deeper level of insight into your own personal health blueprint.
Exactly.
I like that.
And armed with that knowledge, we can then start developing those personalized epigenetic supplements that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Supplements designed to optimize those individual profiles. It's like, imagine tailoring a vitamin regimen to not only address, nutritional deficiencies,
Right.
but also to fine-tune your epigenome for better health outcomes.
It's really personalized medicine to the nth degree.
It really is.
So by the mid-2030s, you're saying we could potentially walk into a clinic,
Yeah.
get our epigenome analyzed, and then walk out with a bottle of personalized pills
Yeah, exactly.
designed to optimize our health and longevity.
It's a real possibility.
That's incredible.
Of course, the specifics of those supplements,
Right.
they'll depend on a lot of factors, but the concept itself,
Right.
it's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Okay, I'm starting to get really excited about this future.
It's exciting stuff.
What about the later part of that decade? What does the world of personalized epigenetics look like as we head towards 2040?
Well, by then, I think we can expect to see, routine epigenetic health screening becoming much more commonplace.
Okay.
This could be, integrated into standard healthcare checkups,
Yeah.
providing individuals with regular assessments of their epigenetic health
Right.
and potential risk factors.
It's like instead of just checking our blood pressure and
Yeah.
cholesterol, we're also getting our epigenome checked.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So by 2040, we could be living in a world where epigenetics is just as much a part of our healthcare routine as as getting our teeth cleaned.
It's definitely plausible.
Mhm.
Given the current trajectory of research and technological development,
Yeah.
this proactive approach could help us identify potential issues much earlier,
Right.
allowing for more targeted and preventative interventions. We might even see the development of multi-generational tracking systems,
Wow.
systems that monitor epigenetic changes across generations,
Yeah.
providing, really valuable insights into inherited health risks.
That's pretty mind-boggling to think about the potential impact this could have on healthcare and society as a whole.
It's huge.
But before we get too carried away by all these possibilities,
Yeah.
I want to come back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
And address the regulatory landscape.
Right.
Are our current regulatory frameworks really equipped to handle, such a paradigm shift in healthcare?
That's a great question, and honestly, the answer is not entirely.
Okay.
While existing regulations for gene therapies and genetic testing, they provide a good starting point.
Right.
We're going to need to develop, specific frameworks for epigenome editing that really account for its unique characteristics
Yeah.
and its potential risks.
What kind of regulations are we talking about specifically? Like, what are the key areas that would need oversight?
Well, first and foremost, safety is paramount.
Right.
We need, really rigorous protocols
Mhm.
for testing and monitoring both the short-term and the long-term effects of any epigenetic interventions.
Yeah.
This includes, preclinical studies, phased clinical trials,
Yeah.
and long-term follow-up to assess both, the efficacy and any potential adverse effects.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's the same level of rigor that we expect for any new drug or medical procedure.
Makes sense. But epigenome editing has this added layer of complexity, right? Because it could potentially impact future generations.
That's right.
So how do we even begin to address that from a regulatory standpoint?
Well, that's where things get really, really challenging.
Yeah,
We need
right.
to develop ways to track and assess those transgenerational effects, which is a big scientific hurdle. Right. It might involve establishing like registries for individuals who have undergone epigenetic editing, collecting data on their health outcomes and the health outcomes of their offspring
Right, right.
across multiple generations.
Wow, that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is, but it's essential if we're serious about responsible development.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about data privacy? I mean, epigenetic information, that's incredibly personal.
Yeah, very, very personal.
So how do we protect that?
Well, you raise a crucial point.
Yeah.
We need to establish rock-solid data protection protocols
Right.
to prevent any misuse or discrimination based on someone's epigenetic profile.
Yeah.
That means, secure storage, strict access controls,
Right.
and crystal clear guidelines for how this information can and cannot be used and shared.
So it's not just about the science, it's about building a robust ethical and legal framework that can actually support the responsible development and application of this technology.
Absolutely.
What other regulatory areas do we need to be thinking about?
Well, we'll need regulations governing the manufacturing and distribution of those personalized epigenetic supplements that we were discussing.
Right, right.
Imagine, ensuring quality control, accurate labeling,
Yeah.
and mechanisms to prevent, counterfeit products from hitting the market.
Yeah, yeah.
It's critical.
That's super important.
It is. And then there's the question of professional oversight, right?
Okay.
Who will be qualified to actually prescribe or administer these epigenetic interventions?
Yeah.
Do we need specialized training programs for healthcare professionals?
That's a good question.
It is.
It's not something you want just anyone, just dabbling in.
Exactly.
And of course, there's the big question of access and affordability. We need to prevent these potentially life-changing technologies
Right.
from exacerbating existing healthcare disparities, right?
100%.
We can't let that happen.
Equity and access, they're non-negotiable.
Yeah.
We need to think carefully about pricing models, insurance coverage,
Right.
and even potential subsidies.
Okay.
To make sure that these therapies are available to everyone, not just a privileged few.
It sounds like we're talking about a massive undertaking here.
We are.
Not just scientifically, but ethically, legally, socially.
It's a huge endeavor.
It is. It really.
But this isn't just about developing a new technology. It's about navigating a fundamental shift in how we approach, health and disease and even what it means to be human.
Wow. Yeah.
It's exciting, but it's also incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And we need to move forward with both enthusiasm and a healthy dose of caution.
I like that.
It's a delicate balance.
It is. It is. Well said. Well, as we move into this uncharted territory, I think it's crucial that we have these open and honest conversations.
Absolutely.
Engaging with scientists and ethicists and policymakers and the public to make sure that this technology is developed and implemented responsibly for the benefit of all humankind. Right.
It's a tall order.
It is.
But it's one that we can't afford to ignore.
Well said. Well said.
It's amazing, isn't it, how far we've come,
It really is. We started with your question about inheriting trauma, and now we're talking about personalized epigenetic editing vitamins.
Yeah. Who could have predicted that?
It's been an incredible journey.
It has.
And it really shows how one seemingly simple question can lead to such a complex and fascinating web of knowledge. And I think it highlights a really important truth that our experiences, both individually and collectively, they can have a lasting impact, not just on our own lives, but on the lives of future generations.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
And what's maybe even more amazing is that we're developing the tools to not just understand those echoes of experience, but to actually potentially rewrite them.
Wow.
To shape our own destinies and maybe even influence the well-being of those who come after us.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is.
And as we venture into this uncharted territory, it becomes even more important, that we have these conversations, that we engage with different perspectives.
Right. Yeah.
And that we really, really grapple with the ethical and philosophical implications of what we're creating.
Couldn't agree more.
And as we move forward, I think it's vital to remember one crucial truth. We're not just, passive recipients of our inheritance, genetic or epigenetic.
We have a say.
We have agency.
Yeah.
We have the power to make choices, to shape our own lives, and to potentially influence the well-being of future generations.
Powerful stuff.
It is. It's both daunting and incredibly inspiring at the same time.
It really is.
It is.
You said it beautifully. While we might inherit certain predispositions, we're not puppets of our genes or our past.
Yeah.
We have the power to understand those tendencies, to rewire our brains, to create new patterns of behavior that break free from limiting cycles.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly empowering.
It is.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The power to shape our own destinies and maybe even, contribute to a healthier, more resilient future for for those who come after us.
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful message.
It is.
And it's one that we should approach with both a sense of responsibility and a good dose of hope.
Well said.
Well said.
You know, as we unlock the secrets of the epigenome, we unlock the potential to not just, treat diseases,
Right.
but to enhance human well-being on a fundamental level.
Mm.
It's a journey that requires careful navigation, but the possibilities are truly awe-inspiring.
Well, on that note of cautious optimism,
Okay.
I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of epigenome editing.
It's been quite the exploration.
It has, and I want to thank you, our listener, for joining us on this exploration.
Of course.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the science of epigenetics to the potential of personalized medicine.
Yeah.
And we even touched on some of the philosophical questions that this technology, raises.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
It has. It really has.
And as you continue to think about the possibilities and the implications of epigenome editing, we'll leave you with this thought-provoking question.
Okay.
If you could optimize one inherited trait in your family line,
Yeah.
what would it be?
Sure, that's a good one.
And why?
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shaping your own destiny.
Well said. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.